Welcome to Channel 18 News. I'm Jim Rogers. Hopkins County EMS ambulance and the 6 paramedics that have been deployed to South Texas in preparation for Hurricane Harvey have already begun work in Victoria, Texas. Their team members moved 8 patients from long-term nursing facility due to impending flooding in that area. The ambulance and the crew are now on their way to Corpus Christi. The 5-day deployment is expected to take place as some computer models show the possibility of over 40 inches of rain for South Texas. An investigation by Child Protective Services regarding a 1-year-old child that tested positive for methamphetamine has led to the arrest of the child's father, Brett William Owsley, age 27, of Sulphur Springs. Both Owsley and the child tested positive for meth and marijuana. Special Crimes Unit assisted in the investigation and arrested Owsley at the corner of Church and Houston Streets Thursday morning. Owsley is in Hopkins County Jail, charged with endangering a child, a state jail felony, and is being held on a $40,000 bond. Hopkins County deputies observed a vehicle parked on the roadside park on Highway 67. They found the driver of the auto, Ashley Suzanne McGill, age 39, of Saltillo, exhibiting signs of nervousness as they began a conversation with her. She told the deputy that she did not have anything illegal in the vehicle. However, when she was asked to exit the vehicle, she handed the officer 2 marijuana cigarettes, a small amount of green leafy substance believed to be marijuana, and in her purse was a clear baggie containing a crystal-like substance believed to be methamphetamine. She also had in her purse a flip-top container that contained suspected methamphetamine. Other drug paraphernalia was also found in her possession. McGill is now in Hopkins County Jail, charged with possession of a controlled substance, penalty group 1, more than 1 gram but less than 4 grams. She's held on a $10,000 bond. In special session Friday at noon, Sulphur Springs City Council heard public comment regarding 2017 tax revenues and voted to eliminate the position of fire chief. They also passed on second reading an ordinance addressing wireless infrastructure management in order to regulate the physical use, occupancy, and maintenance of city right-of-ways by wireless network providers, providing an effective date of September 1st, 2017. During comments on tax revenue, 2 citizens questioned the rising value of properties. One resident stated that she has lived in the same house in Sulphur Springs for 40 years and she did not think the value of her home had increased. She asked that if the city is growing, why those in older homes have to pay an increase. Another resident asked why the tax rates can't be lowered proportionally to the percentage of valuation increase. In response, Councilman Craig Johnson noted that the tax appraisal district sets the property values and the city accepts them. It was also noted that school revenues are affected by the property values being increased. Later in comments, City Finance Director Peter Carstens noted the increase for the city will be slight, although the tax rate for the city of Sulphur Springs will remain at 44 cents per $100 evaluation. Total tax revenues will increase thanks to the 2.5% increase in property values for 2017 over previous years. In a vote of 5-1, the council eliminated the position of fire chief. Before the vote, Councilman Dan Frauenberger, speaking from a prepared statement, opposed the elimination of the position. Noting a study of 13 cities that had made the same move the council would make, 6 of those cities had returned to the old model of 2 departments, fire and police, and 2 chiefs. He stated that those cities that returned to the 2-chief model, when they found eliminating the fire chief position was not worth the cost of cross-training. Frauenberger was also concerned that the loss of experience in not having a fire chief would be detrimental. He pointed out that in his position as Director of Maintenance for the Sulphur Springs School District, he works closely with the fire department in several areas. A concern for putting lives at risk was not only raised by Frauenberger, but also by Wes Armstrong, a captain with the Plano Fire Department. Armstrong, who owns property in the city, said he was not defending the former fire chief because he didn't know him, but he was defending the position. He stated that when fighting fires, someone needs to be outside the fire to watch and direct the approach to fight the fire. He stated that a large structure fire needs someone to command the attack on the fire. He also noted instances where both a fire chief and a police chief would be needed at the same scene, such as an active shooter at a fire. Another citizen questioned if there was anything the citizens could do to stop the council from what had already been done. Councilman Clay Walker stated that the council was doing what they could to streamline the city and the city's budget. Concurring, City Finance Director Karsten said Silver Springs is between a small town and a large town, but that it costs the same for a small town as it does a large town to provide required level of facilities such as wastewater treatment and other services. City Attorney Jim McElroy noted that the city is building a $19 million wastewater treatment plant without raising taxes. He stated that other cities in the area are not able to do that. The City Council will meet again Tuesday, August 29th at noon in the council chambers to hold their second and final public hearing on increasing the tax revenue.
I met an historical figure at the annual get-together of the Genealogical and Historical Societies of Hopkins County. I asked her if she would be here long enough to give us an interview, and she agreed. So let's meet our mystery history guest.
Well, most of you around here would recognize me as Amanda Davis, but my name is really Amanda Sybil Doyle Hill Callahan Davis. You see, I was born a Creek Indian. I was born in Georgia back about 1815, and I went to school there in a mission school in Georgia. And while I was in school, at about the age of 13, I married for the first time.
My.
I married a soldier named Hill. His name was James Hill. He also married two of my cousins. Now, I want you to know that was a really fancy wedding.
There was a triple wedding.
Yes. My cousins married the other two Hill brothers. But my problem was he left one day and never came back.
Well, was this wedding, and I know we don't have a long time to talk, but was this wedding grand?
Oh, man, was it grand. I had one of the prettiest dresses you've ever seen. It was even picked up by the newspapers. They called me the Belle of the Creek Nation. It was grand.
Well, Creek Indians, were they had a society?
Well, the Creek Indians were the most civilized Indian groups in the United States. They lived in houses, grew crops. Some of them had a lot of slaves. And they lived quite well, very civilized. They went to school, and they were pretty well off.
I guess that would make news with the triple wedding and all of that went with us with that in society. But continue your story and don't let me interrupt you.
Well, he disappeared. My first husband just left, and I never knew where he went. But when I was about 16, there was a sub-agent, a new Indian agent, that came to the village where I lived, or well, actually came to the Fort William, which is about a mile south of where I went to school, and we married. Married when I was 16 in 1833. I can't remember if we married in 32 or 33, but in 1833, we had our first son, Samuel Benton Callahan. In 1836, our daughter Josephine was born, but she only lived, a few months. Well, in 1836, there was a little problem with the Indians kind of bothering some of the white people in the area, and we weren't very popular with the president already.
And what area was this?
This was in Georgia, Alabama. We were moved out of Georgia because one of my relatives signed a treaty and gave our land back to America. They weren't real happy with him, but the tribes took care of him.
Okay.
Yeah, they kind of murdered him. This uprising caused Andrew Jackson to decide it was time for us to leave Alabama and go to the Oklahoma Territory. So in 1836, he rounded us up. Some of the creeks were in chains, and that was the longest walk of my life. We walked and we walked, and then sometimes we would get put on boats. We would be packed so tightly in the boats we could not even lay down. There was not enough food or water or sanitation. Over 3,500 creeks died on the Creek Trail of Tears, including my husband. My husband was buried along the river somewhere. I don't even know where. I can't go visit his grave. He died. We ended up in Oklahoma.
And this was your second husband?
This is my second husband. When we got to Oklahoma, my son and I both were there. That was Samuel. And my parents came. Now, my father was a white man, but he spent a lot of time with the Creek Indians. He ran a trading post. My mother was a Creek Indian. She was Susanna May Islands, and my grandfather was Joseph Islands. He was a Creek chief, and my grandmother was Izzy McIntosh. But just because she was McIntosh, don't think she was an Indian. One of her great-grandfathers was McIntosh. He's the one that gave away her land. But we got there to Oklahoma, and my mother and father and two brothers and sisters were all there, as well were many, many other Creeks. Well, in 1937, I met and married Dr. Owen S. Davis, and that's how Sulphur Springs knows me.
Okay.
Went to Arkansas for a while. We lived in Scott County, Arkansas. But Owen was never satisfied. He kept hearing about this place in Texas that had the sulfur springs and how great they were. They would cure illnesses. We had great land, great water. He kept hearing about that, so he was going to go to Hopkins County. Well, in about 1848, we bought 360 acres along the Sulphur Fork of the Red River, and we hired a man to take care of his cattle. And when his wife died, he gave us his daughter that was less than a year old to take care of. And that's where began us taking in orphans. Samuel, my son, Samuel Callahan, was so used to, by the time he was grown, having other kids in the house, he just thought he had lots and lots of brothers and sisters. So we took in the first child when his wife died. Now, we kept that child until from 1848 to 1851, when he finally remarried and he took her back. In meantime, after we bought the land there, we decided we would go to Sulphur Springs.
Okay.
And we bought 80 acres, not on the springs, but on what you would call Davis Street. Have any idea where that name came from? Well, we moved to Davis Street, and we continued to take in children. One of the more interesting stories about kids we took in, there was a man that moved to Hopkins County. His name was Littleton Raton. He moved up north. It wasn't Hopkins County yet when he moved here. In the early 1840s, he moved with his wife and 5 children. And his wife died, leaving him with 5 children. So he married a woman by the name of Eliza Cooper. And they had 1 child. Well, to kind of make the story a little shorter, she decided she'd give the kids away. She didn't want all these kids when he died. He died in the Mexican-American War. So we ended up with 2 of her children because she married Owen's brother Martin.
So she became your sister-in-law. Sort of. Well,
yeah, she did. She became my sister-in-law, but she wasn't much woman. She gave away all the kids. We ended up with the 2 youngest ones. And while all of this, we began to keep in orphans. But Owen was about the biggest fan of Sulphur Springs. He wanted to own those springs. So he went with my brother, Jackson Doyle, and they put the money in and they bought 320 more acres. So with that 320 acres included where the Sulphur Springs are and where your plaza, your downtown is. And it was a very large area. So he every time anybody would come, he would have to tell them about the medicinal springs. And as the town began to grow, he would sit on the hotel porch, and everybody described him as this little old man with a dirty with stains on his waistcoat. I could not get those stains out. I could not, and I couldn't convince him to buy another one. But he would sit up there, and when people would get off the stage, he'd tell them all about Sulphur Springs. Well, he did that. We took in more and more orphans. We would take in orphans, and we would feed them and clothe them, keep a roof over their head, take them to church and send them to school. And when they got large enough to take care of themselves, then they'd go out into the world. We had sometimes as many as 7 or 8 in the house. I think we had about 13 in all. But in 1870, the story of how you know Davis, Dr. Davis, in 1870, when we became the county seat, he gave the land for the county seat. He gave the land for the downtown. Now, he gave it to the square.
Okay.
He didn't give it to the rest of the town. He gave it to gave it to the county. He didn't give it to the city. So the county owns the square to this day.
No kidding.
Yes, he did. And we continued for our whole life there. I finally, after he died in 1895, I moved to Oklahoma to live with my son, and I lived the last 7 years of my life with my son. And there I am buried in Muskogee, Oklahoma.
And your son became an important figure in the Indian tribe?
Yes, my son, even though he was only part Indian, he first became the clerk of their Congress, and then in 1901, the year before I died, he became the clerk of the Supreme Court of the Creek Nation. And so he was very important. He did lots of things. He was even in the War of Northern Aggression, and he was elected captain of his company by the rest of the Creeks. The Creek Nation fought for the Confederacy in the War of Aggression.
Fascinating.
Yes, it was a very interesting time in my life.
And you lived through a very interesting time.
I did. You had to be a tough woman back when I grew up, and back when I lived. You had to be able to take care of yourself, and you had to be able to provide for others.
And I would say you also had to be resourceful, which you were.
Oh, we had to.
Well, my friend and guest, Mrs. Davis, it is almost time for us to end our interview, and we could ask you a million more questions. I have so many things about Davis Street in our downtown area I would like to ask you from your personal observation, but we're out of time because these days, with radio, we have to stick to certain parts of the hour, and too bad that our interview time's ending, but I want to thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
And if you would now tell us who you really are.
I'm Paula Altenbaumer. This is something I do for fun. I've done several of these characters, and I really do enjoy everything I do.
I met you last night in costume at the joint meeting of the two societies, historical and genealogical, and it's fascinating. This is not the first character you portrayed, though.
No, I've done Isabel Hopkins. I did Mrs. Houston, as she preferred to be called, because of the scandal Sam Houston.
Okay.
And I did some characters from early America.
Well, another lady who was prominent in our community began doing these characters.
Yes, Laban Cisco. Laban did a lot of research, and the first character I did, I used her research. She died 2 years ago, and I continued doing research and creating characters in her honor.
I'm very happy that you do, and I know the research takes you lots of places, including the Creek Indians in Hopkins County, maybe some over near Stouts Creek.
There are, over near Stouts Creek, most of the Indians are Caddos.
Okay.
The Creek Indians, there are a few that came this way, but we really don't have any record of where they went.
Okay. And more on that another time. And thank you. It's been fascinating.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Amanda Sybil Hill Doyle Callahan Davis.
Close.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's Don Julian with sports.
Wildcats football team will have their only scrimmage of the season Friday night at Liberty ILO in Texarkana. Wildcats football coach Greg Owens says the Wildcats need to see somebody different. He says they're ready to do that. And Coach Owens says they're ready to go out and see what we've got. He says he knows his team is not where they need to be. Coach Owens says the Leopards will provide a good test for the Wildcats and will point out what Wildcats coaches need to fix and work on. He says it is hard to simulate live play in practice. He calls LE extremely fast and athletic, and he says they will expose Wildcats' weaknesses. He expects the Wildcats to have a great evening of work, and he hopes they come out of it healthy. The Lady Cats volleyball team had a tough pool in a Tyler tournament Thursday, and the Lady Cats lost 3 matches, but they played them close. I talked about the results with Lady Cats volleyball coach Justin Manus on Friday morning.
We went 0-3, but I feel that our pool was probably the most competitive pool in the tournament. We had number 1 3A team Beckville, we had a host team Robert E. Lee, and we had an extremely athletic team in Tatum. All of them very close. It was one of those days where yes, we lost all 3, and usually you should be disappointed about that. But I feel that we brought some positives out of each of those. They were battles. They weren't anything to where any team just rolled over anybody else. It was a fight. There was times when there was a rally that lasted, it seemed forever. The ball never hit the floor. And that just goes back to what I was telling the team about. We're going to play tougher competition because we're trying to prepare ourselves for district. When we get to district, there shouldn't be anything we haven't seen. We should be ready to go.
Who looked good for you for the team?
I'm going to tell you right now that at some point everybody did something positive. Kaylee Jefferson was consistent. Autumn Tanton had a great day. We did a little switch in the rotation. We actually had Andon Hammock doing some setting. She did a great job. Just defensively, we didn't let a lot of balls hit the floor. We got a lot of balls up. So you got Sadie Stroud, you got Maggie McLamory, Amani Taylor. They all did a really good job as well.
When the team attitude is all still good and you can see they're playing hard for you, you don't worry so much about 0-3.
Oh, no, you definitely don't. And that's what I stress to the girls is, we aren't walking in and playing teams that we know that we can just serve the ball to and they're not going to get it back over. They're going to make us play. And that was my whole point about this tough schedule is make us play, make us better. And so the girls understand that most definitely.
Okay, you got a fistful of stats there.
Yeah. I have some stats. First here we'll go on Tatum. In the kill category, Autumn Tanton looks like she had 6 kills. Mika Van Bentham had 7 kills. Mika also looked well yesterday. Kaylee Jefferson looks like she has 9 kills. Lexi Weisenhunt had 3 kills. Andon Hammock had 20 assists. Kaylee Jefferson had 10 digs. Then we had a handful that had 5, Maggie McLamory, Amani Taylor, Andon Hammock. That's Tatum. Beckville, looks like Autumn Tanton had 6 kills. Erica Van Bentham had 3. Katie Jefferson had 3. Andon Hammock had 15 assists. Maggie McLamory had 11 digs. Andon Hammock had 14 digs. Kaylee Jefferson had 11 digs. Robert E. Lee, that went 3. Autumn Tanton, 8 kills. Abby Bear, 8 kills. Mika Van Bentham, 8 kills. Kaylee Jefferson, 8 kills. Andon Hammock, looks like she had 28 assists. Kaylee Jefferson had 17 digs. Maggie McLamory, Amani Taylor each had 6, and Andon Hammock all had 6 digs. We blocked really well in that game too. Autumn Tanton had 3 block assists, 1 block solo. Mika Van Bentham had 3 block assists. Kaylee Jefferson had 3 block assists. So a very good defensive match for us.
Very good. Do you know what'll happen Saturday as far as our schedule?
Yes, we begin play at 9 a.m. We'll play at 9. We win. We play at 1. We win. We play at 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lady Cats are now 10-9 for the season. They'll return to play in the Tyler tournament Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Thanks for watching Channel 18 News. Have a great evening.